Hi there, Ron Watermon, the founder and CEO of STORYSMART. Today, I'm going to do something that I've never done before, and I'm hopeful that you will get a lot of value out of it. I'm going to share my dad's story. The 50th anniversary of my father's death is this week. It's Wednesday, July 13th, the day that I plan on posting this video. And it was a defining moment in my life, candidly something that has haunted me ever since. I've a sense of not knowing my father. And in a lot of respects, it's why I'm so passionate about the mission of STORYSMART, which is to help you tell your story or the story of a loved one in the amazing way that you deserve. We want to do justice to your story, and we want to bring a professional in to help you tell that story. And I'm going to tell you that I am not going to do justice to my father's story, and I'm not being 100% story smart in my approach. And I realized that, actually, that I procrastinated in doing this. I knew it was coming up. I mean, candidly, I thought about it on his birthday, which is in April, or the anniversary of his birthday. And, I let it slide and just, I'm sort of taking the DIY mindset of, how hard can it be to do? And, I procrastinated and waited until this past Friday and, went into my basement and pulled out the trunks of material that we have, for lack of a better, the Watermon Museum, archive, whatever you want to call it, right, that every family has, right? You retain these family photo albums and important documents that you cherish, and you box them up, and you only look at them periodically, and that's the case with my dad. And I've gone down that rabbit hole over the last few days, and I was sort of confronted by a variety of things. I gained some massive insights into my dad, and immediately it became very clear to me that I'm not fulfilling the mission of STORYSMART in my approach to telling my dad's story. So I want to own that, and I want to tell you that I'm going to tell a little bit of my dad's story today, and I'm going to commit myself over the next year or so going through and doing a deeper dive into the archive and trying to piece together my dad's story. And I'll tell you what would be ideal is that I would hire one of the reporters within our network to help do it. If I had the means to do that right now, I would. But candidly, the missing link to doing a really great job with that are two things. One, organizing the materials that we have to illustrate my dad's story. That's so critical. That's one of the things that we ask families to do if we're going to help tell their story, is to get their photographs and family memorabilia in order, so that we can tell a visually compelling story. So there's that element. The second element is having people that you could interview that knew my dad, and it's a very short list. Candidly, his parents are no longer with us. Obviously, my mom, is no longer with us. His sister. There really aren't a lot of people that knew my dad that I could sit down and interview. But I am going to take that on. There are a few folks, and I'm going to try to do that. I'm also going to try to fill gaps in my collection of materials. I realized that I thought I had my mom and dad's wedding album. I don't. I thought I had my dad's artwork. I couldn't find that. It may exist, and I just may not be very well organized here. But anyway, I want to own that, and I want you to know that if you stick with me on this with this video, that my promise to you is to hopefully give you some insights, not only into my dad's story, but how you can tell your loved one's story. And the key to being story smart, it's not just telling a story, any story. It's about being smart about telling your story. And when it comes to telling an individual story, a profile of somebody in this case that is no longer with us, it's really about being organized. And it's really that it's the case with any story, is that you have to have a good intellectual framework. You have to have structure to the narrative, and you've got to weave a coherent narrative for the viewer to stay with it. And a lot of that comes down to, if anybody that's been in video knows this, it all comes down to organization, right? You've got to have your stuff together. The key to being affordable, and we're unique in that respect of trying to be transparent with pricing and cost certain, is that there's some there's assumptions that we're going to be very well organized in going into telling the story, because that's critical to telling the story. And that's one of the things that has shown up for me in a huge way this weekend as I try to go through all this stuff. Is like, wow, it's just a lot of stuff to get through. There's some gaps in the collection. Like, I don't have any photographs of my dad when he was a little boy. I don't have anything from his childhood. I have some stuff from my mom, but not really for my dad. And my hope is that I'm going to be able to track it down, but I may not be able to. And that's just, it is what it is, right? So anyway, with that, let me tell you, there were a couple of documents that were critical to me telling my dad's story that I'm going to share with you here. One is it's his adoption papers, and I'll share another document here in a second. But let me just jump into telling my dad's story. So my dad was born on April 21st, 1943 in Bryan, Texas. His mother was from Missouri. Her name was Serena Mary Green. And his father, as I understand it, was a college student down in Texas. I don't know if it was at Texas A&M, which is really close to Bryan, Texas. I don't know his father's full name. I know his father's last name was Presley. I'm told he was from Mississippi, so I don't know if I'm somehow related to Elvis. I'll let you look at the pictures and you decide and let me know. I would obviously have to do a little bit deeper research to figure out what the family tree is, and I don't know I did do a little bit of research trying to track down things online, and the state of Texas does not have a very transparent process, in my observation. It's not as easy as it is here in Missouri to get a birth certificate. But anyway, and I don't know, the rules are different, when it comes to adoption. But anyway, so my father was born on April 21st, 1943. He was then on February 1st, 1946, taken away from his mother because he was malnourished and he had rickets. He was taken into the care of the state of Missouri through the Children and Family Services. And then ultimately it was the Watermans, Irvin and Ruby Waterman, who became his foster parents. And then they ultimately adopted him on January 13th, 1960. So when my father was 16 years old, his consent is in here. And that's where the name Ronald Wayne Waterman was born. When he was born in Texas, I should go back and say this, his name was Ronald Wayne Green, and he also went by, and this is something I did not know, Wayne Donald Green. So I don't know what's on the birth certificate. I was not able, like I said, to find it, but the name Ronald Wayne Waterman was officially, I guess, entered into the books on January 13th, 1960. My father graduated from Rittner High School in 1962. He played football for Rittner and fell in love with the game of football, which I'll get back to in a minute. That was something that was very present in his life. He loved football. He was a football coach, which I'll talk about in a little bit too. He joined the Air Force. I don't know exactly what year he joined the Air Force, but it was shortly after high school that he joined the Air Force. He was stationed over in Libya, and he was stationed over in Japan. He was at a listening post in Japan, and I'll do a deeper dive on that at some point, but I know that's where he went from being a white belt in judo to a brown belt in judo. He absolutely loved judo and loved Japan and everything about Japan in his time there. He was seeing my mom during that period of time. They corresponded a lot. There were literally, I have hundreds of letters that I'm going to go through and try to piece together his story and her story through that process. He married my mom in the fall of 1966. I was born in the spring of 1967 at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, where my parents lived, and my dad was stationed. My sister was born in 1968 in Colorado Springs at the Air Force Academy as well. We then moved back to St. Louis for a short period of time at Jefferson Barracks, and then we moved to Spain. Terrejón was the name of the Air Force base just outside of Madrid. My dad drove the school bus there, was a staff sergeant, and was one of the coaches of the high school football team. And he absolutely loved the game of football, and there are letters of, he wrote Vince Lombardi a letter, did not get a letter back from Vince Lombardi, but did from his administrative assistant or secretary. He wrote others, including the commissioner of football, but he loved the game of football. Was a coach, loved, I saw recommendation letters that he wrote for some of his players, and he just adored the game of football. He was a devout Christian, and I know that from my mom. I've had a chance to, apparently he was putting himself through college while he was in the Air Force, taking classes at the University of Maryland. He took classes through the University of Georgia, University of Missouri, and was going to be career Air Force, had re-enlisted just before his death. Suffered from headaches and was hospitalized on the base a couple of times, and actually my mom and my dad were both hospitalized when my dad died. She had broken her ankle. I've heard variations of the story, one that my mom was visiting my dad, the other that my dad was visiting my mom. Actually, my dad visiting my mom is the latest iteration of the story that I heard that I think is more credible. But he apparently went to lay down in a room next to hers and went to sleep and never woke up. And that was on July 13th, 1972. And my only recollection from that time is, my sister and I were staying with some friends of the family, and I remember coming into a room at our house, and there were, dozens of people there crying, and my mom was in a wheelchair, and they told us my dad had died. So anyway, that was obviously a defining moment in my life, and it remains today one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about STORYSMART. I believe that everybody matters and deserves to have their story told. Before wrapping up, I do want to share something that I found in the Watermon archives, and this is a coaching book that my father put together, and I don't know if you can see the artwork on here. He was a very good artist, and when I saw it, one of the aha moments that I had is that my OCD organization is similar to my dad's. I think I know where I get it. I mean, he's got all these tabs, and he's got written job descriptions and all of that. It made me think of my time at the Cardinals and what I'm doing now and building out STORYSMART. So anyway, thank you for sticking with me on this, allowing me to tell you a little bit about my dad and use it as an opportunity to hopefully show you how you can tell your loved one's story. If you'd like, we would love to help you tell your story or that of your loved one. We will very much urge you to organize your family archive. That's a great place to start. It's very critical to telling somebody's story. It's much more interesting. As I was telling my dad's story, I was showing you some photographs and some other things that I was able to pull out of our archive. That's key to telling the story. It's not just about talking head interviews. I mean, that's crucial, and trust me, I thought to myself as I was doing that this weekend that I really wish I would have sat down with my mom, even with just a tape recorder, and recorded interviews with her. And I'm going to try to do that with the folks that are still around that knew my father. I try to take that on myself. It'll be a little bit of a variation of sort of the STORYSMART approach, in that, I'm being the journalist on my own family's story, and certainly you can do that, and hopefully you'll get some value out of watching this, and as I share these vignettes, hopefully you'll get some value out of that as well. So anyway, thank you for sticking with me and listening to this, watching this, and until next time, stay STORYSMART.